welcome to the Diane McClay Show, empowering life through choice. Get ready to discover new perspectives, motivation, and balance through Diane's compassionate storytelling and insightful discussions. Whether you're feeling stuck and discouraged or curious and looking for more possibilities, Diane has your back, and she's ready to take you on a journey of self-discovery and expansion. Choice is powerful, and so are you. The Diane McClay Show starts now.
Welcome in, everybody. Happy Friday. You are on Transformation Talk Radio. Thanks for making the choice to be with us today. As always, we realize that your time is important. And when you make the time to engage your life and empower your life by choice, you are actually stepping forward in your power. I'm so happy to have one of my friends, one of my mentors, somebody who always inspires me every single day. Every time we talk, there's a new conversation that comes up. Dr. Alise Cortez is the Chief Purpose Officer and Organizational Logotherapist. She's the author of Purpose Ignited. She's the curator of the anthology Passionate Striving and Why, Women Who Persevere Mightily to Live Their Purpose. And she facilitates the discovery and activation of meaning, passion, and purpose to create fulfilling lives and make impactful leaders in companies across the globe. Alise, I could go on and on about all of your accolades. Pop in, say hi to everybody, and tell us a little bit about yourself. And thank you for being here today.
Thrilled to be on the other side of the mic with you, Di. I'm just happy to be here. It's just always great to have an afternoon where we talk about meaning and purpose and what I get up for every day. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And you and I met because you have a lot of radio shows on, I think it's Voice America or Talk America. Mm-hmm. And you have a Working on Purpose radio show that we encourage people to go back and listen to your shows. But that's how you and I met. We crossed paths when we were talking about purpose together. And our journey has been joined because me with Choice and Courage, the desire to help people, my passion, as we'll talk about here in a little bit, is really change the conversation about choice, right? A lot of people feel like they don't have choice, they're stuck, they're overwhelmed. And if I could shout one thing from the mountaintops, it would be is that every day we have a choice in everything we do, everything we respond to, everything we react to. And it just takes a little teeny tiny pivot to step into that power for ourselves. So, I just wanted this to be a conversation. What has been going on in your world? You obviously have two books out. One of them is my favorite, Purpose Ignited. And I'll make some references to this, but you have just curated an anthology with 25 other stories of purpose. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes and yes, but before we do that, I wanted to say I want to piggyback on this thing about choice that you said. So you introduced to me, among other things, as a logotherapist, an organizational logotherapist, which I am. So that is existential psychology. It's Dr. Viktor Frankl's school specifically, and it's really about presencing, the power and the energy of meaning in our lives. And so one of the things that's central to logotherapy is the notion of choice and the responsibility that comes with it. We always have a choice between the stimulus and the response, always. And that is actually enlarging and fulfilling and emboldening. And so that's why I love your work so much. That's how I put a frame around your work. So I had to say that first.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, right. Okay. So that's how I attach to your world around courage and choice. So these two books, I am working on the third one as we speak. So the Purpose Ignited came out in November of 2020. And, as you might recollect, Di, it was this thing of living your passion or living your purpose, it isn't always convenient, but it's incredibly enlivening and very energizing. And it just had me by the throat. I have to put this book out. And it really came out because of so much of the things that I had learned by Working on Purpose Radio for now it's been 7.5 years. Back then it was, 4 or 5 years. Anyway, so that book is really about awakening people to their passion and purpose, and then encouraging them to become inspirational leaders who will do the same for other people inside their organizations or their lives. And that book, part one, is the basis of my leadership program called Vitally Inspired, which I serve inside organizations to develop their leaders into inspirational leaders. So that's what that book is about. Before I go on to the second book, did you want to say anything else about that? Or
I do. I want to, 2020. I mean, it's hard to think back. We're in 2022 now. We're coming out of this COVID fog. People are still getting it, but it's different. Let's tie purpose and passion What have you learned in the last 2 years with the shutdown, people being locked in? Has that um, has that elevated the conversation about purpose and passion? How has that whole pandemic thing influenced the conversations you're having with companies about purpose and passion? And then secondly, how, from your perspective, are companies impacted now that employees are like, hey, I've been home and I realized I had time freedom, and I had passion freedom, and I had purpose freedom, and now I have to go back to my 9 to 5. Kind of tied in
Mhm.
a little bit. I'm just curious from your perspective, what do you see, and why is this still a relevant or more relevant conversation today?
Gotta wait for the next book, Di. Sorry, gotta go. See ya. No, it's funny because it's really what your question is really largely what provoked me to work on and write this next book. And I won't say what the name of it is because it's going to change. Plus, anyway, but it really is about activating meaning and purpose inside organizations. So from what I could tell in my research and all the conversations I've been having on air, Di, what happened in large part was the pandemic was a large wake-up call for a lot of people, and it made people want more from their lives, and it gave some things to their lives that were missing before. It also illuminated how unnatural the way it is that we generally tend to work is, according to Professor Klotz out of, I think it's Texas A&M. He predicted what's now called the Great Resignation, where people are literally fleeing their jobs in troves, and largely because they want more meaningful work and they don't feel connected to their employers. So in my view, and a lot of what's happened here, which has now become an employee marketplace, workplace of the employee, and that will change somewhat when we probably move into some kind of an economic change or recession, but it will still be, the employees want meaningful work. They want to know they're working for an organization that is doing something good in the world somehow, not just out to turn a profit. Now, profit is beautiful and sexy, but it's not the only thing that people want. They also want purpose. They want meaning. So I'm fully convinced that this whole thing has really greatly, the pandemic being the thing, has in part greatly upset and catalyzed upward a consciousness in people that is being threaded through their families and inside into the workplace. So at home, they got that taste of, wow, I have dinner with my family. Wow, I actually am walking the dog with my family or whatever it is. And it's just amazing to see that reconnection. So instead of spending, all that time in a commute getting to and from a workplace or an office, that got substituted into connecting to other people in some ways, not always. There are also a lot of social disconnects and relational fall off that happened during the pandemic too. So it's not all roses. But I do think that what happened was it forced and illuminated that people don't want to go back to that butt stuck in seat Monday through Friday, so somebody can watch them work to make sure that they're there, and that there is an autonomy and there is a way to have work-life harmony and a way to be able to live life and harmonize work into it. So I think that is an enormous change that I'm thrilled about that has come in part through the pandemic. And I
You know,
want to
I
further champion that.
Well, and I want to do that with you. Like I want to stand hand in hand, because I think choice and courage and purpose and passion are literally yin and yang, left and right, up and down, to and with each other. In your book, you use the word inspiration, and I think I've told you before I'm a word nerd, and I looked it
You
up, and
are.
inspiration literally means to breathe in.
Mhm.
Figuratively, it predates the literal. To draw air into the lungs, that's the 16th century reference, and in 19th century it was kind of connected to a divine influence. And I think the pandemic gave people permission to actually start breathing in differently, being inspired by things that are different. And you've sat on my porch and we've shared, a glass of wine or a beer or a cup of coffee. And I remember there have been conversations that you started with, what is the problem that you live to solve?
Mhm.
Because people always ask the question, well, how do I identify purpose, or how do I identify passion? And it seems to, like, a lot of people, like it's a really big, confusing, very ethereal kind of conversation, right? But I think that's one of the things that I remember very poignantly from our conversations is, if you can identify the problem that you feel called to get up in the morning and try to find a solution to, then you're already starting to effectively work and live in your purpose. True?
Which is going to move us over into the next book, Passionately Striving and Why. So first, the problem that I've come to understand that I stand to solve is emptiness. And that's what people call, that's what's called in logotherapy, the existential vacuum. In everyday parlance, you can call it the, midlife crisis or whatever, but it's this feeling like, is that all there is? That's really the problem that I've discovered that I stand to solve. Now, where it gets interesting is solving a problem isn't the only way that we can get to purpose. So what I did for the Passionately Striving and Why book is I went recruiting around the world, literally via LinkedIn, looking for women who looked like in their profiles, it sounded like they were talking about purpose. And I tried to recruit from as many different countries as I could, different cultures, different languages, different religions. And so I found people from Australia to Zambia. And these are intimate stories of how they've discovered their purpose and how they're now serving from it today. And what I wanted and what we've done is the vision was we wanted to showcase that purpose is available to anyone, anywhere in the world, regardless of education, ethnicity, culture, religion, anything. And that when we serve from it, we can really make a difference to our own lives and to those we serve. That's the reason the book is out there. That's the extension, that's the opportunity, that's the invitation. Now, this is where we get into the next part of that connection of what problem do we stand to solve. So in the book, what I did was I categorized the 25 stories along 3 well-known paths to purpose. They're not the only paths, but they're really well known. One of them is, what big problem do you stand to solve in the world? And so, for example, one of the stories is from India, Punan Kasturi. She started a company for composting in a country called India. And if you've ever been to India, you know that they have a real problem with garbage and such. And so here she is, she's taken on, garbage as a problem to solve. Pretty amazing thing to take on. So that's one path that you can take. Another path that you could take is passion. What is it that you just so love, so pour yourself into that really that's the main thing that you want to focus on? Maybe you're a concert pianist. Maybe you love architecture, you love buildings, whatever it is, right? That could be another path. And then the third path, which is my path, is what is it that's ailed you in life, that's just had you by the throat, that you've had to wrestle with, that in the wrestling with, that you have become, that you learn something that you can then teach somebody else. And so that was for me, that was my wrestling match for meaning and purpose. And I'm living in Brazil. I've got the world by the tail. I'm 26 years old. I have a maid, chauffeur, and a gardener. I'm studying, I'm traveling. I've never felt more empty in my life. So that's where it sparked for me. Sorry, there's one more path that I wanted to share.
No, that's okay. This is your show today.
So there's one more path for our listeners to be able to attach themselves to. And that is the notion of how your moving through adversity has transformed you into something else. So the important thing about adversity is a really important part of our lives, and your choice is to see it as such. But the important thing is how do you travel through some big thing that life has served up to you, and on the other side you became something else. So one of the stories in my book is Nathalie Lafontaine. She's in France. She'd been a very successful executive working for really large organizations in France, very successful as a professional. She was born with multiple sclerosis, MS, somewhere in her 40s. The doctor said to her, you know what, you have to get a surgery to correct your back. Otherwise, you're just going to walk so hunched over that, life will be at everybody's waists. And they said, we're going to make your back so straight by the time you come out of this. So she agrees to the surgery. She wakes up from the surgery to 4 sets of eyeballs looking at her. So sorry, things didn't quite go the way that we planned. You're never going to walk again. Oh, and Nathalie being Nathalie says, that won't do for me. So she's, she goes through all this crazy, therapy, and painfully, like to the point, when you go through the kind of pain that you constantly vomit, that's something. And that's what she did to be able to even, today she walks, she can get around, she can move with a cane. She can't really move, but she can get around. So, but in the process of going through all that, the transformation that she went through is she hearkened back to, what did I always want in my life? When I was a kid, I always said I wanted to be an author. I wanted to write books. And I went the business route because I knew I could make money, and I knew that making money was really important. So her transformation was she became an author. She has a fantastic TED Talk. And she's got 2 million views, and she's an author. She's working also on her next book as well. She's been on my show as well. So those are your 4 paths. So if that helps listeners and viewers understand, that this whole purpose stuff, it's much more tangible than you think it is. And it's probably more obvious than you think it is. You're probably making it more difficult than it probably needs to be.
Well, and I want to tag on to that. Again, the word nerd in me, you've heard me say this before, but I interviewed somebody, and again, another word nerd, and we looked up the word purpose. And it actually originates from Latin purpose, meaning to propose.
Yes.
So 2 of my favorite questions in the world are what if and why not? What if we redefine purpose as the act of making small promises to ourselves? My promise to myself is that every day I work really hard, and I don't mean like it's a difficult thing, but I intentionally want to be a better person tomorrow than I was today. We're flipping it. Every day I wake up, I ask myself, what can I do differently or better to be the best version of myself today in this moment? That's purpose, right? That is a small promise to myself, a purpose, a purposeful statement with intention that allows me to do these radio shows, have these conversations, invite authors on, write a book myself. And the thing is I love, and I want to reiterate it, your statement that purpose is more accessible. It's not as complicated as everybody thinks it is. And all you have to do is say, what are one of the 4 paths? And I think you said there's more than 4, but is there a place of adversity in my life that has taught me something? Is there something that I want to solve in the world? Is there something that inspires me, that allows me to give? That's the essence of passion, right? Breathing something in and then combining it with our energy and our soul and our intellect and our belief system, and then our meaningful action. And we put it back out into the world in a way that creates meaning and adds value to the world and doesn't take value away from the world. I forget your 4th one, but you can tag that in real quick.
It's passion, really, right? So you cover the adversity, your passion, what's ailed you, and
then the problem.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm going to interrupt real quick, and I want to just say, for me, sometimes when you think of the problem that needs to be solved, sometimes the brain shuts down. And one of the choices that I make in my life, and I encourage my listeners to do, is look for solutions. So when you ask the brain, how do I solve this problem? The brain may go, I don't know. And it gets big and it gets complicated, and then we push it off. But if we were to change the question and say, what's possible? What if something could be different? Why not try something new? Then the brain's like, ooh, I like this. I like generating solutions. I like generating options. And our power goes up when we actually change it from solving a problem to generating a solution, which is what I think your author in India did. What is the solution to the garbage problem in India? Well, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to try something. As soon as she started trying something, she's functioning in purpose.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about choice is, as soon as you make a choice about one thing, you start getting information. If that woman went down the road of, hey, here's a solution to the organic waste problem in India, and it didn't really work out, the beautiful thing about choice is you can pivot and make another choice and get more information. So you're still working in purpose.
So that sparks something else in me that is probably pertinent here. And I think it'll swing into the next thing that I'm working on, my book 3. So when I set out to do my PhD, and I started it in 1999, finished in 2005, I studied meaning and work and identity. And what's been fascinating along the way is it's been a gravitational pull. And it's been my divining rod. And it's also, now I realize, part of my North Star, because ultimately what I've learned is purpose is our ultimate identity. So what I studied before was identity, which I didn't realize it was going to get me to purpose. And so what I love about what one of my radio show guests said is that purpose is the ultimate act of showing up. Isn't that gorgeous?
That is beautiful.
Ultimate act of purpose is the ultimate act of showing up. Exercising, living your purpose is the ultimate act of showing up. And I completely agree with her. I got it. Her name is Alicia Hare. She wrote a beautiful book around purpose. It's stunning. Anyway, she was on my show. So, that's so much of what I have come to in my work, and where I'm going next in this next book about activating meaning and purpose, is really, really showing up. And it's about reaching to be able to help everybody in an organization to be able to access their meaning, which is, of course, that energizing structure that you and I've talked about, and that's the basis of my work. But also the purpose. What does the organization stand for? Why should anyone care that they're in existence? And how do the individual employees thread their own purpose with and through that to enlarge themselves by being in that space? And I do want you to know, Diane McClay, that, and this is something the word nerd has brought up in me, and you are featured in the book in one of the chapters. You and I, I love owls.
Mm-hmm.
And you went looking up to see, what is a group of owls called? We have a herd of cows. We have a flock of geese. What's a group of owls called? And Diane, what is it called?
It's a parliament. For great horn. Different owls are different things, but great horn owls is called a parliament. And you and I toyed around with the concept of building something around the parliament of purpose.
Well, it's showing up. I reference you as, you're the one that gave me this name, but I do reference this as a notion that organizations have the opportunity to create a parliament of purpose inside themselves. Every group does, that's connected or whatever. And that's really powerful. And you, my friend, opened that for me. And one of our many sessions, I remember having like Friday night sessions where it's like, I don't know, 9 o'clock here and 7 o'clock there. And I got a glass of wine and you're like, talk to me about your book. What's going on? I'm thinking this, thinking that, and whatever. And so you have, like, The Color Purple, the movie, help, where she gets a song scratched out of her head as she's getting her hair brushed. You have helped me scratch out ideas about my work, my speaking, my programs, my books, when we have those kinds of scratch the head conversations, even if they're done via Zoom.
Well, wow, thank you for that. And I always, when I told you, I have so much trust and faith in you and the work you do and our friendship, that when that idea popped in my head, I think you remember me saying, hey, I have no problem at all. Whoever gets to use this first and claim it and put it into the world and start putting energy behind it, I'm totally fine. I'm honored to have the reference. Thank you for remembering that. You're making me smile inside. And that, folks, is like a little small example of purpose. Something came into my head. I had these muses that gave me this phrase. I had this, what is the meaning, right? I looked for the meaning because owls had been showing up in both your life and my life in different points. And I looked for the meaning, and then that allowed me to be curious, and it allowed me to gain some information, and it allowed me to say, how do I feel about this thing? Right. And you and I both united over it. So that's super awesome. Thank you for the reference. I haven't gotten to that chapter yet. I have your book here, but I will definitely kind of look for that.
It's not in that book, just so you know. It's not
okay.
It's in the upcoming one. The number 3 that's coming out. Yes.
Okay. Well, see, now you have at least one person buying your book.
Okay, good.
I got read it.
One.
No, we're going to get a whole bunch of people. When you get that thing penned out, you're going to come back on and we're going to talk to everybody about why it's different than 1 and 2 and how they can implement it in their life. Before we go to break here in a couple of minutes, you work pretty much with corporations and you help develop their leadership. Let's flip the question though, because not all of our audience members are corporate job holders. They're not always in leadership or management. So what are some things that you can share with employees if they work within an organization about their role in purposeful leadership at whatever level they're at? They may not be at the decision-making level or a high level of influence, but they still work in the company. So wouldn't it make sense that you actually solve the problem from both ends, both the upper level and the lower level?
Yeah.
What would you say to our listeners who are like, man, I just wish I could make a difference in my company and I can't?
And the answer is you can. Every single individual person can. So the first 2 things I want to say. One is back to choice. You, the individual employee, always have access to critical, vitalizing meaning. It's always available to you. How do you see your work? Can you presence for yourself? Why is it important that I showed up? Who's winning here? Who are you serving? You know that, even if nobody else says it, you have the ability to know that and let that beautiful meaning wash over and enliven you. So you always have access to meaning. There are 3 sources to meaning, which we can talk about some other time. But so first, you always have access to meaning, even if nobody else gives it to you. Secondly, you always have the ability to influence from no matter where you sit in who you're being, how you're sharing your ideas, how you're uplifting and encouraging other people, putting the ideas out. I just heard this crazy woman named Alise Cortez talk about this thing on this radio show called logotherapy and meaning and purpose at work. Seems like maybe we could check into that, so you always have the ability to be able to sprinkle these new ideas that you hear about that you find exciting, interesting, inspiring, and presence that inside your organization to ignite conversation. So you always have a way to make a difference, always, wherever you sit.
Well, I heard 3 things that I want to call out real quick. First of all, you always have a way to meaning. And I do want to pick that up after the break. I want to hear the 3 ways because I don't want to lose that. I don't want to have people wait for it. If they need to know what the 3 ways of accessing meaning are, we've got to put it in their hands because that's the way we start shifting the world.
Okay.
But what I heard is you always have access to meaning. So you rattled off a bunch of questions that an individual could ask themselves. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. What are some questions that you can ask yourself as an individual that gets you the information about the choices you make or how things seem relevant to you in your world, right? That's step 1. Step 2 is start verbalizing those conversations with other people. Maybe it's your coffee partner. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe it's just somebody. Maybe it's the person who works below you. And you want to say, hey, I had this crazy idea. I'm just curious, how does it sound to you when I say it out loud? So ask questions, start verbalizing things, and then you didn't say this, but I heard it, start listening to the language and the phrases of what's happening around you. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Is there a 4th or 5th step that we could give to people about how they can start affecting meaning in their jobs before we go to break? Am I missing anything?
Well, recognize other people, recognize what you see, the magic you see in others. And I call that in the first book, spreading pixie dust, right? So when you see somebody else doing something, maybe they're just really good at it and you tell them that, right? It's lifting for them. You just add more great energy into the world. You raise consciousness, or empower or recognize other people for their contributions and say, thank you, right? It's so simple, but it makes such a difference. I can tell a story about that too after the break as well.
Well, let's do that. What I heard in that is gratitude, right?
Gratitude is huge.
That gratitude, and I have a friend, David George Brooke, he's called That Gratitude Guy, and he literally says, gratitude will turn anything you have into enough. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back with Dr. Alise Cortez, who's the Chief Purpose Officer and an organizational logotherapist, and she's the author of Purpose Ignited. And we're talking about how you can put meaning, inspiration, passion, and purpose back into your life, your job, and the community you serve. Stay tuned. Welcome back in. You are listening to the Diane McClay Show, where every day we empower you to engage your life through choice. My guest today is my friend, my mentor, somebody who inspires me every single time I have a conversation with her, Dr. Alise Cortez. She is the author of Purpose Ignited. She's also the curator of the book, Passionately Striving and Why. And just before the break, we were talking about ways that the employee, not the leader, not the manager, but the employee at any corporation, agency, bureaucracy, charitable organization can start tapping into inspiration, meaning, passion, and purpose. And Alise, you wanted to clarify something about passion and purpose. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so there's a couple words that, one, you can't go a day without hearing about the words meaning and purpose. And so what's happened is, both those words, and even passion too, has really become what's called, greenwashed, becoming overly simplified. So first, let's talk about purpose. So let me tell you what purpose is not. So I was speaking at a conference in September in Denver, and I heard a fellow speaker belt out. She said, "My purpose is to double my income," and I almost barfed. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad for her listeners in the crowd, like they actually have been, misinformed. Purpose is never self-serving. Purpose is always about serving other human beings, always. So it's that process of being of service to other people. So you exist to serve someone else. So that's what we have to anchor purpose in. Meaning is really, meaning is registered in the limbic brain. That's our middle brain, and it's registered alongside where emotions and memories are stored. So you can start to think, it's that maybe is why it's so sticky. And meaning is always registered along our values, that which is important to us. What's important and meaningful to you may not be to me because I have a different value. I care about something else. Passion and purpose are often also misconstrued as one. And I'll, talk about what, and I'll separate that as we go through the sources here in just a second. But it's really important that we're clear about this because, to our point over the break, otherwise we lose the power of these really important words if we literally wash them over with superficiality, with commonality, and we don't actually let their pure essence and uniqueness register for us.
Beautifully said. And I want to I'm going to reference your chapter 4 titled Passion, Your Unique Contribution to the World. And if you bear with me for a minute, I want to read some of the words you wrote. When you think of passion, it is easy to default to the glorious feeling you have when you're in love or love someone or something with complete abandon. That may be part of the description of the definition, although there is much more to the term. When Alise Cortez, when you talk about passion, you are referring to the fountain of energy that other people give to the world, what other people touch, what they create, what moves them, the essence of the thing that emanates from them. It's almost as if that flame smolders inside you and uses you to express this passion. The energy must come from somewhere. Passion means it comes from you. You give it like it's an active service of love of yourself. And I get chills when I read that. Right? If anybody's confused about what passion is, they need to go to your book and go to page 67 and just read those words. It has to come from you. And it's this thing that is inside you. You were probably born with it, or you developed it at a very, very early age. I can remember I have always been in service to other people. I was that kid in 4th or 5th grade that when the less popular kid dropped their book in the hallway, I was that person who picked it up and didn't just give it back to them, but said, what do you need help with? Right? I was challenged by a coach to make a list of things that have always been true, especially when I left my dream job of being a park ranger. When I got into that stuckery of life of, man, my whole entire purpose was to be a park ranger. Now I don't have that title. I don't have a uniform, the patch, the badge, the prestige. But what I know now in the 7 years of my journey of leaving one dream job and having the beautiful opportunity to actually step into the next dream job is that I'm still a steward. I'm still a steward of the people. I'm still a steward of the messaging of the land. I am still, in essence, the park ranger. I'm not doing it from the confines of an agency and a box and a uniform with rules and regulations. And, this is what you hear in my voice, listeners, right now. This is passion. Right?
Exactly.
My purpose is to connect you to your perspective and meaning. And by the way, perspective is the lens through which we see, and perception is the meaning that we attach to it. So if you can change your perspective, look at something from a different angle, almost naturally by default, you're going to get more information that will inform meaning for you. Right? So that's another piece of my passion is perspective. If you just change one word, then you've changed the meaning of a sentence. And let me give you a quick example. In my verbal judo training, it's a way that we encourage officers to get compliance with the least amount of resistance. But if you don't think that the meaning changes, if I just said he never stole the money, that's one thing. If I said he never stole the money, there's a different meaning. If I said he never stole the money, and so on and so forth, if you put a different emphasis on each part of those 6 words in that sentence, it takes on a completely different meaning. And this is the thing that I would tie back into what the average employee can do in their workspace is that they can listen to the meaning that's being used around them, and they can ask questions about it, and they can get curious, and they can actually put their language into the workplace as long as it's professional and respectful, obviously. Thoughts?
Beautifully rendered. I love that. It's just beautifully rendered. And I wanted to echo, and the thing that I want your listeners to understand about passion too, is you were a perfect example of sharing that. But if you see, passion is, there's energy to it. So we might be exercising our passion in service of our purpose, but passion is about energy. And so this is a good time maybe to talk about those three sources of meaning, because that's one of them.
Let's do it.
So logotherapeutically speaking, so as a logotherapist, and this is again, Viktor Frankl's work in existential psychology, he's identified, and I align, that there are three sources of meaning available to us as human beings. And first, we need to say that in logotherapy, the premise is that we human beings, our chief concern in life is finding meaning. That is what we're up to. And it's also our chief source of motivation. So logotherapy is also a motivational theory and a philosophy, by the way. So the three sources that we have available to us of meaning that are always available to us all the time, and our opportunities to get present to them. The first one is our creative contributions, what we give of ourselves to the world. And this is the thing, that what can't you not do kind of thing. And that creative contribution, I then map over to passion. I call that source of meaning passion. That is a source of meaning. So in other words, the more you can give yourself over to your passions, the more energy you literally get in the expression of that. And that's why it's so useful. You want to be doing more things. That's why when you continue, Di, to do the things that you're passionate about, you get enlivened by them. You're energized by them. That's what we want all of the listeners and viewers to do. Go find those things and do those things that you're passionate about. Everyone wins when you do. So that's the first source. The second source is experiential. So that speaks to the encounters and the experiences that we have in everyday life that are meaningful. Remember that these are all, for these to register as meaningful, these things have to, align with your values. So the experiential, I map that over to inspiration. So what is that? That's today's parlance. What experiences, encounters, literally breathe air into your lungs. For me, part of that is getting to host my radio show. That experience every week of hosting the show and being in a conversation with other people where I get to literally learn from them and be lifted by them is incredibly inspiring to me. It is a source of meaning that I've been doing now for 7.5 years. And then, I'll say one of my passions, that because it aligns with my value of empowerment, a passion that I try to do every day is I love to go find someone that I can raise, I can thank, I can recognize. And one of my favorite things to do in service of that passion is when I'm in a public place, the airport, the grocery store, is I go looking for, especially my favorite thing to do is to tell a woman that she's beautiful. So I go looking, my daughter, who is now 19, she's like, all right, let's just get this over with. Who's this going to be? And she knows the drill. But I'm always, sincere about it. I don't say it if I don't mean it. So I find a woman and I come up to her and I say, you're beautiful. And invariably, every single time, she's surprised, and she steps back and she smiles and she gets taller and she says, thank you. And sometimes she says, I really needed to hear that. But I do that because I need to do it. It makes me feel good. It's my expression because it aligns with the empowerment that I value. So this helps you start to really distinguish and get access to meaning for yourself. The third source of meaning is called attitudinal. And so what that speaks to is back to choice, Di. It is the choice that you have to adopt whatever attitude you have to whatever life throws at you. You always have a choice to that. And there is empowerment in that choice. And that's why it's a source of meaning. So I map that over to mindset. So your mindset is, for me, like, I really did not believe I would amount to much in life because I didn't go through a lot. I had a pretty easy life. I thought I'm never going to amount to very much. And so it helped actually for me to go through a few things that have really been hard for me over the last few years. One of them was getting divorced. There have been a couple health scares. Those things helped to catalyze. And my attitude toward going through those was one of, what can I make of myself from this? So that's another powerful source of meaning. So that choice that you have to choose how you respond, how you look at things, how you perceive things is another foundational way to be able to derive that critical, enriching, enlivening meaning.
That is such a great conversation. And when we replay this on my YouTube channel, I'm going to make sure that I tag those three ways of creating or connecting to meaning. And you inspired something in me because you said that passion is connected to values, right?
The three sources of meaning are all connected to values. They are registered along your value system. Yes.
Right. So if value system is the baseline, we all can, I'll bet if I challenge the listeners right now to list their top 5 values, they would be able to do it in 30 seconds. I would ask them again, what are your next 5? And they'd probably take a little longer. And I would bet within 3 minutes, people could probably clearly articulate at least 10 values that they hold near and dear. And if anybody who's not driving right now, go ahead and do that. Take a minute and list your top 5 values and see what comes up for yourself. For people who say purpose is way far away from me, I don't know how to get to it, my brain is saying, okay, flip the script. What are your values? And then are you acting in them? Are you living them to the fullest ability that you want to? Are you expressing them to the world? Are you sharing them with people? Are you letting people know that these values are so important to you that you're not going to change them? And I don't mean to be fixed and rigid, right? Because that doesn't help our society either. But if you don't know how to connect to the passion, or you don't know how to connect to the purpose, then let's start with list our top 5 values. Ask the question, what is their purpose? What is their intent? How do they serve me? What good do they provide in the world? Is there something different that I can do or change? And how can I elevate this value? That would be just on the fly, that would be my way of saying, this is how meaning and purpose and passion is literally at your fingertips, because you already know what your values are. And if you don't know what your values are and you haven't done a quick little value check, values may change, not like black and white, but as we grow and as we have influences in our lives, our values may shift a little bit. So what I believed when I was 15 may not be what I believe now. And I want to clarify that belief and values are very different.
Right.
But my value system of being a good human being and taking care of the planet and taking care of other people, that has not changed since I've been a kid. My core value of being kind and being nice and being generous and being an optimist, that hasn't changed. It has only elevated with the conversations that I'm having with people like you. So feed into that.
You've done something beautiful for your listeners and viewers, and that is you've given them a way and access back to that. This is easier than we think it is work. If you start with your values and you really understand. And so for me, I've always been, this is so interesting. Empowerment is not a word I would have used earlier in life, to your point. So what's happened is your values can come to a larger, bigger expression as you get older and more mature. So when I was younger, even to the point when elementary school, I was a cheerleader. And I don't mean I was a rah. I never did that. In fact, I didn't, that wasn't something I pursued at all. But I was always someone who encouraged, somebody who said, I see what you're doing. That's great. Keep doing it. And so that has been a strong, to your point. So if you can go back and you can look at, because here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, your purpose has been with you your whole life. You just haven't recognized it as such, probably. It's been there the whole time with you. It's just waiting. It's whispering very quietly in your ear, trying to get your attention. But you're really, really busy living this really crazy, fast-paced life. And you're doing what you think you should be doing, what society says you should be doing, and you're poo-pooing it. So it's there for you. And if you go back and look at who have you always been, like Diane just said, if you go back and look at who you've always been, you'll see that there's something in that just needs the expression. And I'm telling you, there is only one you who can uniquely see and do what you can do. Your opportunity, the world desperately needs this, is for you to do that, for you to not play small, to play as big as you can and make the biggest difference that you possibly can, because the world needs that of you. And so when you start thinking about that, it's probably scary, but I hope it's really encouraging and inspiring and exciting for you too. But to Diane's point, it's go back to who you've always been and find a way to point that to be of service to the world, because you probably also heard that there were things wrong with that person. You're too slow. You think too much. You're too sensitive, whatever that is. One more thing, whatever was behind that negative judgmental too is the beginning of your genius. Whatever people told you were too much of, it's never going to get erased out of you. Your opportunity is to figure out, where do I point that in the world? Because it is you. There's so much beauty in that.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've coached some of my clients on, people that are shifting careers or they got let go of one and they're trying to figure out how to pay their bills, there is a genius, there is a beauty at the intersection of your individual skill set and knowledge and talent and other people's disposable income. What,
like that.
Like here, like the intersection is, so if it's easy for you to do in the world, you should be charging somebody money for it, because it's not easy for someone else. Here's my rule. People will always pay for something that they don't know how to do. They don't have the time to do. They don't have the tools to do it. They don't have the interest in doing it, or they just want it to be easy. Car maintenance. I can change my own oil. It's an all-day project if I do it. My time is valuable. I'm going to go to a mechanic and I'm going to pay somebody money because that is their zone of genius. That's easy for them. Mm-hmm. They know how to do it. I'm going to pay for that every single time. I mean, honestly, they don't even have to tell me how much it is because it's so valuable to me that I'm going to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So if you have something that's ridiculously easy for you to do, not only should you be doing that in the world, if it gives you joy, obviously.
Right. I was going to say, qualify that.
Mm-hmm. Right. But the thing is if you're trying to shift jobs, or you're trying to be one of these people who's making some money on the side or getting a side hustle, or maybe thinking about starting your own business, that's the place of passion and purpose that you should actually be thinking about, because whatever you do that brings you joy, that's easy for you, is ridiculously difficult for somebody else. And that other person is going to be willing to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I love when you added the qualified piece, that if it brings you joy, because here's the thing, here's what I don't want you to do, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want you to do something that you're really good at to be able to make money, because that actually is just really what that's conveniently also disguised as a skill. So people slog for years with a great skill and they get entrapped with the money because it's such good money, they know how to do something. I want you to add back the joy and the passion to that. And then if you're really good at that too, then, so I loved how you qualified that. Yeah. Because too many people, I mean, and this is the thing, best intended people who loved us, cared about us, gave us advice on what to study and what field to go into, because that was the view that they had. When you think about how life and work constantly evolves, if you're getting advice from somebody who last really kind of thought about this maybe 20 years ago, you're really behind you're way behind schedule here. So everything is constantly iterating. So in fact, just this afternoon, I had a conversation with a partner of mine, an organizational partner of mine, and she's asked me to come up with a program on meaning and purpose anchored in logotherapy for junior high school students. Can you imagine if we were in high school and we got access to what's meaningful to us? What are we passionate about? What might our purpose be? And then we chose our college path and maybe even our career. Instead, what happens is, Aunt Sally's really successful. Maybe I should do what she does. Dad's always been in insurance. I'm going to go in insurance. That's the way it normally goes. So right. I am so excited about this opportunity.
That's an awesome, it's an awesome thing. And I had the beauty and the honor of having my dad say two things to me when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. He gave me two pieces of conflicting advice. He said, figure out what you love to do and then figure out how to get paid for it. And then he said, figure out what you love to do and don't ever make that a job so that you don't lose the passion and the meaning that thing of beauty has for you. I was like, well, that's not helpful. And at the same time, it was literally helpful, because I remember that I wanted to be a park ranger ever since I was in first grade. Like, I have a thing that said, I'll be a park ranger, an airplane pilot, a firefighter. And I wrote in biologist because that's what my dad was. And then because I had that passion, I had that connection to something, and somebody said to me, yeah, you can do that. I got blessed with the opportunity of having almost a 22-year career in something that made me happy, and I got paid for it. When I shifted out of it, when it no longer brought me joy, and when the alignment was not with my, the alignment of my agency wasn't with my values, personal values versus bureaucratic values, So, I looked at you've used the word catalyst a couple of times. And as a word nerd, I want to bring this to the audience because this is something, again, another place that people can put into their lives today. Most people think catalyst means that it's a substance that speeds up a chemical reaction, which is true. But the origin, that's a 1900 definition. In 1650s, from Latin, it means to dissolve, to break away. So kata plus lion means to loosen, to divide, to cut away, apart. And the lu part, the pi root of the word lu, is to basically separate. So if we were a catalyst and we not only use the energy of our passion to feed something and speed up the process in the world, what if we also went to the root of the word and we cut away and we dissolved the things that dilute that passion, that dilute that purpose? And we set that aside and we reconnect our passion to our values, to our meaning, to our joy, and we do it in service to other people. Imagine if we used catalyst in both ways. We speed something up with joy, meaning passion and purpose and intention. And we also cut away the things that don't feed into those.
Yes. And since I am all about ongoing life discovery and development, you will constantly need to cut away that which no longer serves you. It's kind of like going through your clothes closet and making sure I've been wearing that for 6 years. Maybe I should throw that away. I guess it doesn't fit anymore anyway. So, right. It's this constant need to evaluate if things are still in alignment, if there's something that fits better or will better actualize you. So I like that, Di. That's awesome.
Yeah. So before we run out of time, I want to make sure that you give the audience a chance. If they're a corporation or an agency and they're looking to change their corporate culture, how can they work with you and connect with you, and what can you do for them?
Okay, so find me on my website, alisecortez.com. And the way that I work with organizations on cultures, we always start by distilling purpose, and where it's detected inside organizations. We do that through the whole organization or representations of the organization. So it's actually cultivated and elicited through the whole organization. And then that becomes the statement that lives among us. So that's the way that I do that. And then it gets folded. We can then, once we have that statement, we then can start to fold that into the way that we recruit, the way that we onboard, the way that we train, the way that we recognize, the way that we celebrate. So that's how you actually start to embed the purpose into your culture.
Okay. And how can people get your books? If they've been inspired by this conversation, they want to learn more, how can they get a copy of one of your books? And then what would you say to people when they buy it?
So if you're going to buy one copy of the book, go to Amazon. You can find them both on Amazon. If you're going to buy 30 or more, definitely contact me directly because I can give them to you directly and at a discount. So, and what I would say is, both of those books are for you if you really feel like, gosh, there's more. I know there's something more from my life for me than I've been doing here. And I'm kind of hungry, but I don't know what to snack on to get there. It would be because I wrote the first one to awaken you to your passion and your purpose. So if you feel like, gosh, I know there's something else I wanted, but I don't know, that'd be great. And then the second one about passionately striving and why is really helping you get more clear and connected to your own purpose, your own path.
Awesome. And as always, closing words. We've talked for an hour. We've talked about intent, meaning, purpose, passion. We've thrown all these words out at people. Wrap it up in a nice little package that people can take home on Friday. They can consume it, share it with their friends and family.
You got one precious life and you don't know when the exit ramp is coming. So every single moment is really your choice to be able to presence that meaning and step in that space, because the more you can access that meaning, the more you have an energy for life, a verve, a gusto that spills over to everything that you do. And everyone in your surroundings, your midst, when you exercise and live from that, wins. And then that bit about purpose, what are you here for? You are here for a reason, and the world needs you to be able to bring that, to be able to help make the world a better place.
Absolutely. And just thank you for being here and extending this conversation with me again. I hope you'll come back. I hope we continue to have greater conversations as we both evolve through choice and purpose. I'm Diane McClay. You're on the Transformation Talk Radio Network with the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group. We thank you for showing up, for being you, and for making the choice to put your passion into the world. If anybody has any questions about what we talked about today, you can reach me at dianemcclay.com. You can also look me up at the KS Media Group app on your Google or Apple Play Store. Download it, go to the directories, find Diane McClay, and you can connect with me that way. Alise, my friend, namaste. Thank you so much for doing the work that you do. It is valuable and important.
Incredible pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, friend.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you for listening to The Diane McClay Show, where you are empowered to enact change in your life through choice. You know that little voice in your head that's been telling you to pursue that passion project? Or maybe it's been screaming for you to go outside and explore the great outdoors. That voice is you, and you deserve to be heard. Listen, make a choice, make a change, and watch yourself grow. For more information about Diane or to work with her personally, visit dianemcclay.com.